Hi, this is Siyanda, and this week I'll talk about a book that was highly, highly recommended to me via Twitter, and that I hunted and hunted and hunted for, and was so excited when last week I finally found it and got it as a gift when I was in Cape Town. And this is a book called We Need New Names by NoViolet Bulawayo. I had no kind of preconceptions about the book. I had absolutely no idea what it would be about. I think I may have read a review months and months ago, but I had no kind of clear picture of what the book was about. All I knew was that it was highly, highly critically acclaimed, and it had been shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize 2013. And this kind of little bit of knowledge suited me quite a bit because, as you know, I don't like to know what a book is about before I read it. And what even makes me even happier is that at the back there's no kind of description of the plot line. It just says, then we are rushing, then we are running, then we are running and laughing and laughing and laughing, which is great because it kind of gives you an idea of how the book is structured and the flow of the sentences, which was by far my favorite aspect of this book. And basically the story is about it's kind of told through the eyes of Darling, who is a 10-year-old, I think, living in a shanty town called Paradise. And what's very interesting is throughout the book there is no mention of Zimbabwe, which is, I think, obviously where the story is based. And I say it's obvious because the writer is a Zimbabwean immigrant to America, and there is mention of political turmoil that kind of lands all these beautiful, colorful characters in this shanty town. And there's kind of all this kind of mention of certain aspects of Zimbabwean history that I'm a bit familiar with, and kind of featured throughout the book in you know bits and pieces. So I thought that was very clever that the name of the country, the name of the president, the name of anything is never mentioned. So you don't get the idea that this is actually a book about any kind of like political um, turmoil, or it's not really a book about kind of, things from the perspective of an average Zimbabwean or anything. So that's what I enjoy about it. She does not kind of go out of her way to represent Zimbabweans or to represent Africans, or, well, not quite in the beginning. So I love this book because of the way that it was written. It was written kind of slice of lifey. There was no very clear plot line. Only at the end you get an idea of what the book is trying to do and say, and successfully at that. So that is something that I enjoy, because I don't like to feel like my hand is being held when I'm reading a book, and I don't like to feel as if the writer's agenda is very, very clear. And so what happens with it actually in that basis is that when she begins the story as an 11-year-old, because it does chronicle the story of a young Zimbabwe living in, a young girl actually living in this environment, and how she grows up and eventually goes to America, and how she kind of deals with being an immigrant there. And what I like about the way that the story moves along, is that there is no kind of clear agenda of the writer, only until the narrator is old enough to express for herself what she kind of believes in, or what she's experiencing, and then that's when you get the idea of what the writer was trying to do with the book. So this and then so that's my first thing that I loved about it. My second thing that I loved about it, besides it not being very heavy-handed at first, was the language that was used to tell the story. It's English, obviously, but it's kind of my favorite type of writing, which is where you kind of read the book and you don't feel as if it's English in the way that you know it. You do feel, you get, I anyway, I felt as if it was being translated in the mind of the writer as she wrote it. It felt as if she was translating her thoughts from her language, which I think is Ndebele, and into English. And so there was kind of, so as a result, the beauty and poetry of her native language was being carried on into English. And there were all these kind of funny turns of phrases and very, very amusing similes that I was over the moon about. And I think one, for example, that I will always remember, because it made me laugh out loud in the airport when I read it, was she says something like, you know, the character sees a baby in a church and does not believe that this baby is particularly good looking. And so she says, and it's funny, I can remember this word for word. And she says, oh, the baby was ugly. It was a very ugly baby. It had this permanent look of shock, as if it had seen the buttocks of a snake. So that was, that was the clincher for me, that I knew that this book has to be a book that I talk about with you guys and recommend very strongly that you take a look at. So I think that she writes in tradition of Chinua Achebe, and kind of how I wish most, I think how African writers used to write, and now it's a bit different because we're all kind of raised on this diet of, Western literature and American literature, and and you end up kind of emulating what you read, which is, I mean, it's very natural. However, they wrote as if they, and I'm talking about the Chinua Achebes, the writers of the past who were fluent in English but made a point of actually kind of contributing something new and exciting and fluid to the language in which they wrote. So she does a similar thing, and I absolutely love that. However, obviously there are some inconsistencies, which, I mean, I spotted only because I've been dying to read something that stuck so closely to the fluidity and poetry of a Bantu language or an African language or whatever. And so I would notice a little, in the dialogue when, for example, the children that are portrayed in the book in the beginning, the friends of Darling, the main character, how they would slip in some kind of American turns of phrase, which I guess were only indications of perhaps I got my own ideas, perhaps how long it had been since the author had interacted with young Zimbabweans who had been totally away from the influence of Western culture. So, I mean, just little things like that I noticed and was not very excited to see, because I think it's very important to be consistent in your dialogue. And she manages to do a much better job than I've seen in the past 2 years or so, in the past few years, sorry. And so, I mean, I give her that, but there were some little moments where I thought, no, that kind of ruins the flow of it. But overall, this is an amazing book. It's eye-opening. It's interesting. It's funny. It's very funny. It doesn't take itself too seriously in the beginning, which is why towards the end, when it, becomes the sort of flowery montage to the, flowery homage to the struggles of the African immigrant, I think that it kind of, for me, it kind of, it's a bit discouraging towards the end, where I think, oh God, I think I actually struggled to finish the last chapter because I had just fallen so in love with the first chapters of it and the kind of free-spirited nature of it, that when it eventually got to the end and it was more, deliberate is the word. It became deliberate towards the end, and I thought, like I said, I don't like to have my hand held when I'm reading a book. Anyway, so besides all of that, it's a book that I definitely recommend. It is, once more, it is, I love the cover. It is We Need New Names by NoViolet Bulawayo, shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize 2013. I think it is published by Random Vintage Books or Chateau and Winders Random House. I'm really not sure. I'll leave the information down below. And so NoViolet Bulawayo was born in Zimbabwe a year after independence from colonial rule. And when she was 18, she moved to Michigan. So I think that information might give you an idea of how the book will be structured and kind of, where it'll get at eventually. And if you've read it, I'd like to hear what you think. And if there's any kind of other book that you guys would like to recommend for me to read, do let me know. I think in my next video, I will be showing you the collection of books that I have bought and perhaps read in the past 3 months, which is like 10-15 books. And they're all African books, so I think that's really exciting for me. And it might just be exciting for you. And so, forgetting something. Okay, thank you very much. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos about African literature. Thank you very much. Bye.